Good morning, Steelers Nation. Definitely not what I expected to wake up to today, but the Steelers have fired offensive coordinator Matt Canada and relieved him of his duties. I cannot remember the Steelers ever firing a coach slash coordinator in the middle of a season. So that's why I said I can't believe that they actually did it. But this was a move that I think a lot of you guys and myself as well felt like was long overdue. As someone who is really skeptical of the hire and not a fan of the hire in general, it is a little bit disappointing that we wasted, the last 3 years kind of watching this offense. Kind of get into some of the reasons why I felt like it was necessary to do it at this time. But honestly, I think Canada's downfall overall was just, if you can't formulate or orchestrate any type of modern day passing attack, I think it's really, really difficult to have success at this type of level. Canada's resume is what it is. It's not overly impressive. He's had a lot of stops, but very few that were, extremely exciting, I would say, or long term. So that is what it is. Some of the reasons why I think they had to do it right now. Number one being the quarterback. You take a quarterback in the first round, Kenny Pickett. Um, the rookie season was slow, but he finished on a little bit of a high note. The sophomore campaign has not been what I think the Steelers or really any of us expected it to be. I thought that at least we would get some type of marginal jump. But Pickett, we've talked about it on the channel, about it a little bit. On other platforms, on Steelers Now, on Twitter, he's honestly looked like he's regressed this season. And I think that anytime you're the offensive coordinator and you're tasked with developing a young quarterback, and he's not developing, oftentimes that's what leads to these tough decisions right here where someone ends up losing their job. So I think you do it right now because for one, the Steelers have went 4 straight weeks without 200 total passing yards. I mean, that's unheard of in the modern NFL game. Just looking at those numbers last night while I was writing a separate article was just uh, to be honest with you. And you just can't win games like that at the NFL level. It's a quarterback's league, and if you don't understand or can't consistently generate any type of efficiency through the air, it's going to be difficult to maintain your job. And with Pickett struggling, especially over these past couple weeks. I think this gives you 7 games for the rest of the season to try to evaluate him separately from Canada because the offense, the passing game in general, has multiple layers that are kind of some of it's quarterback performance related, some of it's offensive architecture related, some of it's play calling related. But this stretch at least gives you a chance to see what Kenny is going to look like without Canada at the helm. It seems like Eddie Faulkner is going to be the de facto offensive coordinator. Mike Sullivan's going to be the one calling plays because he has prior experience with the Bucks, the Giants, of doing that. How that distribution of labor works out, I have absolutely no clue. I think the Steelers will maybe clear that up a little bit later in the day when Tomlin talks to the local media. But how that works, we're just going to have to see. One thing I want to acknowledge, though, it is week 11, 12, 12, whatever, in the season. They're not going to be able to install a completely new offense late November. It's just not. There's not enough time. So you're not going to go out there and just see a completely different product. Now, will it look different? Let's hope so. But just again, expectations need to really be tempered. I feel like with this type of move, especially the way the quarterback's playing right now, and just in general, this is why we got on this channel a little bit in the summer talking about how the decision to bring him back was not the smartest. It just seemed like they were settling for mediocre results after finishing and almost making the playoffs last year. But this is not a move that's probably going to lead to just fantastic results. I think the best case scenario here is that the Steelers show some type of competent passing attack right here. Pick at least like he did towards the end of his rookie season. Um, and that they can somehow creep into the playoffs behind a defense that's playing really well and a run game that's playing really well. And you can definitely acknowledge Canada's impact, his thumbprint, if you will, on the run game, which I think has been playing extremely well. They're now a top 6 team, I think, in rushing EPA per play. Those are good numbers, but again, got to be able to throw the ball. So these next, couple months, you get to see what Pickett looks like on his own, and then you can kind of evaluate what going into year three. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself in terms of talking about the future without just, not seeing it. I think we got to be realistic about where the offense was, and the Steelers finally, I felt like, came to that realization that this wasn't good enough. And I mean, for them to make this move at 6-4, having a playoff spot at the moment is very surprising to me. Again, because I felt like, last year, the move to bring him back, it just seemed like, okay, we won a bunch of games down the stretch, the hyper efficient run game and the passing game. And, Pickett looked a little bit better, but we almost made the playoffs. So let's try to run it back and see if we can make the playoffs. And for them to make this move right now tells me a couple things. One, I think there's probably a lot of very, very frustrated offensive players right now. You've seen some of the quotes about some of the skill players, particularly Najee Harris, who is typically relatively, I would say, soft spoken or not one to, I don't want to say lash out like that's a bad thing. He was just speaking it. But some of the comments that you've heard really concerning. I mean, we heard about Pickett's comments after the Browns game about they anticipated a bunch of man coverage because that's what Cleveland does, and then they got more zone heavy looks, and it just took them too long to adjust. Well, when the quarterback's coming out there and saying like, "Hey, it took us way too long to adjust from getting a zone heavy game plan comparative to a man heavy game plan," it's usually not a good indictment of the coordinator. Being able to adapt on the fly, being able to construct new ways to attack on the fly is part of the job description. So, some of the things that I would like to see, just in terms of things that they can implement moving forward. One, play action. I have not. I've looked for stuff on Sullivan's offense in the past. Wasn't able to find a ton on the internet. I'm going to go back into the weeds today to see if I can find a lot of maybe a playbook or some clinics or something. But they've got to use action to try to move the ball efficiently down the field. Look for more explosive plays. They're not generating them at all through the air, just organically. Teams have kind of wised up. They're not letting Pickett just take the one-on-one shots to the sideline down the field like they were last year. So you got to find some way to adjust. They're seeing a ton of a ton of zone coverage, excuse me, right now, a ton of cover too. They got to be able to solve that problem. So, being able to get these weapons reintegrated back into the offense, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, now that Pat Fryermuth, the need to see some type of progress, and the quarterback has to play much better. I don't know how else to really say that. You look at the film, there are definitely plays that, while the architecture of it isn't perfect by any means, the surroundings, the environment isn't great, but there are definitely plays that he's leaving on the field just due to his own struggles as well. So, very interested to see what happens. Never a dull moment covering the Steelers for sure. So I appreciate you guys tuning in with me. Never want to celebrate people getting fired, but this is the right move and definitely one that I feel like, Steelers Nation kind of needed, especially coming off that really rough loss to the Browns. So just do me a favor on the way out. Like, subscribe, comment, turn on notifications. Y'all are the best. I appreciate y'all. Peace and love.